Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. With all of this green around us, the threat of wildfires may be the last thing on your mind right now. But as we know all too well, conditions can change pretty fast in Oklahoma, and winter is right around the corner. Today we begin with our Extension fire ecologist John Weir to learn more about what you can do right now to lower your risk.
Well, I mean, all the rain that we've had this latter part of the summer, I mean, we're still, we're a couple of weeks into October, we're mowing lawns, everything is green. It's just not the typical Oklahoma fall going into winter, but it's going to change. We'll get some freezing weather and this green grass will go dormant, and then dormant fuels burn very well. And so it's something that we need to be thinking about. It's something that really should be on our minds year round about what can we do to protect our valuables, our families, our homes, and our properties in the event of a fire.
Let's talk about this place here. This is typical of what we would see around Oklahoma. What kind of things do you observe when you look around this area?
Around this house, again, they've kept the lawn mowed short. Part of it is there's some different, what we call ignition zones that you have greatest concern about. And the first zone is that first ignition zone is about that first 30 feet around your house. That's a big part of it, is looking at that close proximity, because that's where most fires start, is in that close proximity. So again, we want to keep fuels down. We want to keep trees trimmed up. We want to plant shrubbery and stuff that's not flammable or not as flammable. We need to think about like mulches that we use in the gardens and stuff that we have around our flower beds and stuff around our homes, to make sure that it's non-flammable, or we keep it moist in really dry conditions and stuff, so it's just not flammable. And just little things that we don't think about like on a deck here, that you make sure that you cover up the edges of it so stuff can't blow and collect underneath and cause it to be flammable. Also, embers doesn't get underneath there. So again, they've got this deck all covered up, so there's nothing can blow under it, nothing can grow under it. Embers aren't going to blow into it. And also, if you look at it close enough, it's made out of non-flammable building materials, and that's another good thing that we can think about. But again, deck doesn't have to be that. It can be made out of wood, but we just want to think about covering things up.
What other things should we look at around here?
Well, there's some other things that we can look at. So again, here within this house, they've got trees planted back away from the house, so they're not growing up into the eaves, so they could possibly ladder a fire up in there. But also you have to take into consideration what kind of trees they are. Again, oak tree back there, it has leaves on it. Right now you may think it's flammable, but it's pruned up. The grass is mowed short. Fire should never even get up in that. And plus, during the winter months, whenever we're more flammable, those leaves are gone. Now, the next thing to worry about is where those leaves going to accumulate. So then that's a thing we may have to worry about: raking leaves, moving leaves out of guttering, where they accumulate next to the home or something like that, where they could cause a problem. That's where we need to work with that. Propane tanks are another thing. Again, we want to make sure we keep them the proper distance from the home. Also, we want to make sure we keep all the grass, everything down around it. A lot of times it's good to either use herbicide to remove vegetation from around it, put it on a gravel pad, something that's non-flammable, just so it doesn't heat up. But the main thing is getting it the proper distance away from the house.
There's lots to see and talk about, of course. It's kind of limitless. But you and your team, as we continue walking and talking, and colleagues from other states have put together a pretty comprehensive guide in the last few months?
Yes, we have. We got it out this summer, about preparing your ranch and your farm for wildfire, because that's something we've got to do. And we not only try to look at your house, but also outbuildings, hay storage, having a plan for evacuation of livestock, if that's correct. Because again, in the last several years, we've had some incidents where people have been severely injured and even killed trying to evacuate livestock. And again, we need to think about what is the proper way to do that, when is the proper time to do it, when's the proper time just to walk away, because again, it's not worth your life. There's not enough firefighters in this state to come help and set at everybody's house and to do all that kind of stuff. So you've got to try to make sure that your house kind of is able to stand alone. Because again, the other thing is that fire going to occur when you're at home? We don't know. And so you need to think about, if I'm not here, can this house, this barn, this equipment storage area, can it survive without me? And that's what we should strive to do.
Well, we're glad we're talking about it today, and we want to share the guide with our viewers. So thank you very much for this information today, John.
You bet.
And for a link to the guide, we have it on our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Seems like for the longest time we've included Russia in our discussions about wheat. And Kim, there's been news about Russia again this week.
Well, the reason Russia's in the market is because they are clearly the number one exporter of wheat, and not only wheat, but hard red winter and hard red spring wheat. Right now, I think the market's moved to about from 12 to 12.5% protein level requirement, and Russia's been meeting that for the last couple of years. But this week we got a report from Moscow, from their agriculture department, saying that they were raising the production, or the production estimate for wheat, from about 2.4 billion to about 2.5 billion. So kind of like we saw last year, except last year they raised it from 2.4 to 3.1. They raised it again this year, but not as much. But it does imply that they're going to put more wheat on the market than the market was expecting, say, a week ago.
What does that mean for prices in Oklahoma? I mean, does the markets account for this?
You bet they account for it. However, I think to a certain degree, the United States and probably the market as a whole was prepared for this type of announcement. You look at USDA's estimate, they had it at 2.6 billion, still above what the Russian estimate is. You didn't see any big decline in the market. Now, you didn't see any increase. You know, it'd been inching up just a little bit. And so I think any impetus for higher prices, I think it pretty much killed that, but it didn't take the market down.
Most commodities, most countries have markets preset for their wheat. Where is that Russian wheat going to go?
Well, most Russian wheat goes to North African, your African countries, your Western Asian countries. There was a rumor a couple weeks ago that they were selling wheat into Brazil. So they're trying to move into that South American market to a certain degree. But I think they're going to have more wheat to do that.
Let's kind of switch gears a little bit to some stuff that's been going on in Oklahoma. It's been wet. I mean, we've needed the rain. Southwest Oklahoma's needed the rain. They got the rain, but just kind of at the wrong time. The cotton fields are soggy at best, parts across the area. What does that, I mean, obviously it's going to impact the price of cotton. Let's talk about that.
When you got the cotton producer, I think the biggest deal on cotton is the yield, the quality and the yield. I don't know that it'll have that much impact on price because of the area. You know, it's not a major cotton producing area. So I think it's going to hurt our producers with the quality of the cotton, and it's going to reduce the yield. You look at other impacts of the rain on like wheat, for the most part, rain makes grain. I think for the most part it's going to get us pasture up. However, producers that just got that wheat in the ground, got heavy rain over it, they're going to have to replant. I think most producers anticipated that and adjusted their planting timing for that. Of course, if you don't have the corn in or you don't have the beans in many areas, that's impacting those harvests and that quality too.
Okay, thank you much. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hello, Wes Lee with your weekly Mesonet weather report. Wow, what a week we have had for intensive weather conditions. We had a major hurricane, Michael, in the Gulf, a tropical storm, Sergio, in the South Pacific, and more than a dozen tornadoes and widespread flooding in Oklahoma. There was something for everyone who has an interest in severe storms. This week's cold front also brought some of the coldest air of the season, just missing out on freezing conditions in the Panhandle by a degree or two. To date, we have not recorded a freezing temperature in Oklahoma yet this fall. However, that is expected to change by early next week. The widest impact of weather in Oklahoma this week was heavy rain. The 7-day rainfall totals on October the 10th had some impressive numbers in western, northwestern, and south central Oklahoma. Every Mesonet station recorded rain this week. However, much of the highest rainfall amounts were centered around the major crop growing regions. The last few months have definitely been wet. If we look at this map, we can see just how much rainfall above normal we have received during the past 60 days. Much of the state is colored blue, which indicates 175% of normal or more. The highest amount seen is a whopping 367% of normal at Fitztown in southern Pontotoc County. This recent heavy rain has also brought the statewide year-to-date total to well above normal. The blue line on this chart shows just how high above the 15-year average the thick black line has been since the 1st of August. Additional rains from the remnants of Tropical Storm Sergio are expected to add to this next week. The drought monitor for Oklahoma is in as good a shape as it's been all year. Soil moisture is now sufficient to remove the drought rating almost completely from the tip of the Panhandle and far southwestern counties. The only remaining drought on the monitor this week is in northeastern Oklahoma, centered between Osage and Rogers counties. If we look at the forecast, we see high probabilities of below normal temperatures for the week of October 15th through the 19th. This could be welcome news to northwestern Oklahoma wheat producers looking for a freeze to help with damaging fall armyworm populations. After that, the 30-day forecast map shows temperatures are expected to move back above what is considered normal for this time of year. As for rainfall, we see the light green color that indicates slightly above normal chances for precipitation over the next 30 days. This warmer and wet trend could continue on into the early winter as El Nino conditions show signs of strengthening as we get into November. That's all for this week. Please join us next week for more information on Oklahoma weather in your Mesonet Weather Report.
Well, all the rain we've gotten in the state has been pretty positive when it comes to crops, but there are some negative aspects to it. So JD, let's walk us through kind of how this growth has probably caused some problems when it comes to fire.
Okay, for purposes of wildland fire, we have generally two seasons, what we call the growing season and then the dormant season. Right now we're in the growing season. We usually define that from May through October. And the first half of our growing season was actually not much rainfall, but when you look at starting in July, August, September, we've had more than normal rainfall over much of the state. And so this has encouraged greater than normal fuel growth. And when we talk about fuel, we're talking about grasses and other types of vegetation that can burn. And with all this grassy fuel growth and forbs and small brush, that will be fuel for dormant season when we get into the dormant season.
So walk us through like when the dormant season begins.
Okay, the dormant season typically occurs when grasses like this start senescing, as some of them already are now, and we have our first hard freeze. All the grasses basically die and go dormant. The deciduous trees drop their leaves, they can be burned, and so forth. But just to give an outlook for the upcoming dormant season, we now have these excessive fuel loads of grasses, forbs, and small brush over a lot of the state that's received excess rainfall. When these go, they convert to what we call 1 hour dead fuels, and some of the little thicker fuels can convert to 10-hour fuels, like some of that dead wood down there. Those are 10-hour fuels. And so these typically are involved in the start and maintenance of fires. So in areas that have had excessive fuel loads going into the dormant season, we can expect probably greater than normal fire activity given ignition sources. So you add these excessive fuel loads on top of the below normal precipitation that might be expected this upcoming dormant season, you can have some possible problems for wildfire activity in Oklahoma.
So switching gears a little bit, you have some workshops that are currently going on, and then there's still a few more coming up in regards to OK Fire. So talk to us a little bit about those.
Yeah, OK Fire, as most of your, or some of your viewers may know, is our weather-based decision-making system for wildland fire, which includes wildfire applications and prescribed fire applications. It's a program of the Oklahoma Mesonet. We couple the Mesonet to take us up to the current time with respect to fire conditions, and then we use a 84-hour, basically 3.5-day forecast to take us into the future. So we're going to be holding these workshops around the state, one in McAllister, Duncan, and Stillwater. These are open to the public. They're free. We basically have 6 hours of training where I go over various aspects of fire weather, fire danger, smoke, anything related to wildland fire, and then we intersperse these with lab exercises where they can go to their laptops and navigate the website to become more familiar with how the products work.
All right, thanks, JD. If you would like a link to some upcoming OK Fire workshops, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
There is a new trade deal to replace NAFTA, and here to talk about it is our Extension Ag Policy Specialist and economist, Larry Sanders. And Larry, why don't we just kind of start off for folks with a broad overview of what's developed?
Sure. The President and the countries of Canada and Mexico brought it right down to the deadline of September 30th, but we now have a new acronym called the U.S. Mexico-Canada Agreement, and it does replace NAFTA. And it has a wide variety of categories in it, from auto to drugs to intellectual property rights. The focus we'll have on it today is to talk about what's in it for agriculture.
And you've spent some time kind of boiling that down specifically for agriculture. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. We might just talk first of all about the U.S.-Mexico side of it, because there they basically decided early on to take agriculture off the table. So what farmers and ranchers saw with NAFTA before this agreement really hasn't changed. It's basically still there. With the U.S. and Canada, there have been some changes. President Trump really wanted to get dairy farmers in the United States to be able to have more market access into Canada, and the Canadians finally gave on that area, and it's in Class 7 milk. Probably doesn't matter much to Oklahoma dairy farmers, but we're talking about things like skim milk, powdered milk, milk concentrates, that sort of thing. There are some agreements with cereals, grains like wheat, that may affect Oklahoma a bit there. The rest of it, it really hasn't changed a lot. The most important thing we have here is we're back in a zone of certainty. When President Trump backed out of NAFTA, when he backed out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we saw a great deal of uncertainty created among farmers and ranchers, particularly with trade between Mexico and Canada. They're two of our three biggest partners, China being the third one. And now farmers and ranchers can rest more comfortably because we have certainty there. So we may see changes yet to come in future years, but in 6 years they will get together and they'll say, do we as three countries like the way this is? If we like it, it's good for 16 years. And after 16 years, if they like it, it's good for another 16 years. So this degree of certainty could be with us for a very long time. The one thing that President Trump didn't get out of Canada was that he wanted the dispute resolution to reside within the United States court system. Canada was unwilling to give on that. So when Canada gave up the market access for the United States to come into the dairy markets, the United States gave up that access for the dispute resolution. So it's very much like the NAFTA was before. So we're in a degree of certainty there. What we still have to resolve now are the trade wars that we have created with steel and aluminum and the tit for tat that China has brought on board.
Just one piece of the picture then is, like you said, a little more certain.
That's right.
And it is all about the negotiation, the give and the take.
It's ongoing.
Okay, Larry Sanders, thanks a lot. We'll see you again soon.
October is often the time, of course, when we wean the spring-born calves, and it's again the time that we take a close look at the cows. as they go through the chute at weaning time to see which ones that we're going to keep or cull. It's very, very important, I think, for cow-calf producers that are going to cull some cows this fall to understand the pricing of cull cows. Cows are generally graded into 4 different grades based on their body condition. The fattest cows are the ones that call breakers. And if you're acquainted with our body condition scoring system 1 through 9, breakers are generally going to be cows that are at least 7s, probably 8s, or maybe even 9s. Very, very fleshy, fat cows. The next group is called the boning utility cows. And that's the cows that probably are more typical for what a lot of commercial cows may look like coming off a good summer grass. They'll be in that body condition score of a 5 or a 6. Then we get into the thinner cows. They're called the leans. And basically leans are going to be those cows that are less than a body condition score 5. They'll be generally 3s and 4s. The last group are also thin cows, but they're very, very small cows. And their weight usually will be less than about 1,000 pounds live weight, and they're thin as well, and they're called lights. And so you've got those 4 grades: breakers, boning utility, leans, and lights. When you look at the market news reports, you're going to find that there will be some price spread between the fleshier, fatter cows. The breakers are usually the highest price per pound. Those leans and lights are going to be the lowest price per pound, which is an interesting situation for the beef cattle industry, because usually it's almost the opposite, where heavier cattle generally bring the lower price. Instead of this way, it's the heavier cattle bringing the higher price per pound. And I think that's important for us to understand, that if we're going to cull some cows and they're real thin this fall, we may want to try to do something in a short period of time, 45 to 60 days, put them on a real high quality pasture such as wheat pasture later in the winter, or feed them a really good ration for a short period of time to try to improve their body condition and get them into one of those better grades. They'll weigh more and they'll bring a higher price per pound. I really think that we want to understand this grading principle and how it affects pricing of cull cows, and it really brings back to me the importance of proper cow culling. Culling those cows before they get real thin, if at all possible. They'll weigh more, they'll bring more per pound, and therefore more dollars back into our operation. Next week on the Cow-Calf Corner, we'll visit a little more about cull cows and one of the other key aspects that affects their pricing, and that's dressing percent. We'll see you then on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Like it or not, Oklahoma has seen a lot of rain here lately. And Derrell, what has that meant for wheat pasture across the state?
Well, in general, it's a good thing. Moisture is always good in Oklahoma. Arguably, we've had a little too much at times and a little too concentrated, but as long as the wheat got planted around all the rain, it's coming up fast, it's growing fast. We're going to have some wheat pasture before very long. There's been a lot of interest in stocker cattle this fall. We've seen counter-seasonal increases in these calf prices in September. Now, I think we've probably peaked that out here. Of course, rainy, cold, wet weather is not a good time to receive lightweight stocker calves, and that took a little bit off the market this last week, and we're probably going to see some seasonal flattening in this market. I don't know that it's going to drop a lot as we go through October.
Now, here this last week, there was some trade data that came out. What are you seeing in that?
Well, you know, we continue. We've been on a heck of a run with beef exports. You know, we've had another month of, you know, strong year-over-year increases. We're up over 14% year-to-date. And we're up, you know, across the board to our major markets, with the exception of Canada is down a little bit. But in general, we're doing very well in these export markets, and they're really helping us a lot, given that we're still increasing beef production.
With all of that news in the trade data, how's that impacting the markets?
Well, you know, aside from the actual trade data, we've had a lot of trade news recently. So, you know, we signed a new Korean free trade agreement. That's very good. You know, again, really to take some uncertainty out of the market. It continues what we've got. South Korea has been our fastest growing export market in recent years. They're the #2 market. And so that's very important. Of course, we have the new version of NAFTA now, USMCA. It's pronounced NAFTA. So, you know, we basically rebuilt NAFTA. And that's the biggest contribution of that, is to, again, remove the uncertainty of not knowing. We got back basically what we had before and a little bit more in some sectors. So from a beef market standpoint, again, that's reassuring to the market. We're talking about working on a deal with Japan. That's farther down the road, and possibly the European Union as well. And then, of course, in a broader sense, China's still there in the background. That's going to be an ongoing issue for some time to come.
As we move throughout the season, throughout the year, how important will trade play into 2019?
It's going to continue to be extremely important. We're going to continue to see year-over-year increases in beef production. Demand in general has been good, and a big component of offsetting some of that increased production is the exports and the movement of that meat offshore, not only for beef but also for the other meats as well.
Okay, thank you much, Derrell Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And now here's some information about the OSU Beef Industry Conference coming up this week. Some of the national leaders in the beef industry will be there talking about improving conception rates through vaccine product choices and timing. Also, OSU's new Temple Grandin Endowed Chairholder, Janine Johnson, will talk about her experiences on the effects of stress and environment on animal health. For more information about OSU's Beef Industry Conference, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime on our website and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.